Jamie Bambrick started us out, and Parker Brown brought us home at the Dangerous Friends Conference. Stick around to hear it.
Exploring theology, doctrine, and all of the fascinating subjects in between, broadcasting from an undisclosed location, Dead Men Walking starts
now.
What is up, guys? What is up, my fellow Dead Men Walking listeners? What should we call the Dead Men Walking listeners? You know, I've been thinking about it long and hard for years, and, you know, I can't call you Deadheads because I think Jerry Garcia already has that. So if you have a good idea of what the listeners of the Dead Men Walking podcast should be called, send us a text. Click below, and you can just hit that link that says send Greg a text, and I will read it. And who knows, maybe you'll get to name us. But yeah, welcome back to another episode of Dead Men Walking Podcast. I'm your host, Greg Moore, and you can find out more about us at dmwpodcast.com. Click through, support us with the merch. We appreciate it. But we also have a couple show sponsors too. We have Striving for Eternity with Andrew Rappaport. Of course, he has this wonderful book, What Do We Believe? Right now, if you're a Dead Men Walking listener, you get free shipping on that. Click on the link below, check it out, get free shipping, $15. It'll come right to your door. It's a great book for all ages, everywhere in your faith, in your sanctification process. If you're a new believer, it's great to read and kind of see what we believe. If you're more mature in your faith, it's a great reference book. Give it to a friend, put it on your library shelf. Andrew Rappaport, love what he does over there at Striving for Eternity, and we appreciate the support of the show. Also, Dominion Wealth Strategists, Josiah, Justin, I know both of them personally, both involved in that company. We're very big on managing wealth, creating things for the kingdom of God, making sure that we are not the servant that is hiding the talent in the dirt, but actually making it go to work for us. They do everything like budgeting as well too. Maybe you're going, man, I'm upside down right now. The economy's crazy. I've got debt. How can I get out of this? What can I do? Free consultation. You can go call them right now. They'll say, hey, this is what you need to do. And they do this a lot. To not only get out of debt, but get your spending in control, figure out what you need to do. And then from there, how do I grow that? Do I invest? Also, real estate planning, insurances, budgeting, all those things that you need to know about how to steward your wealth wisely. Dominion Wealth Strategists can help you with that. The only distinctly reformed wealth managers, and from baptism to burial, they have you covered. So make sure you click on that link below there and sign up for your free consultation today. Nationwide, by the way, too. All right, so we have the last series of the Dangerous Friends with you, and I figured I'd do something special for the last one. I'm going to give you the first interview I did at Dangerous Friends, and then the last interview. And the first interview was Jamie Bambrick. He was on the podcast 3 or 4 months ago, so I didn't want to rehash the same things we talked about there. We actually talked about Europe a little bit more, the church over where he's from, what's going on in Europe, the trends there, how that compares to the United States. Very interesting to get a perspective from someone who lives in Ireland and who's here in the States just for a little bit and then flying back. I think he was flying out later that evening, or actually the next day on the evening. And that was a very interesting conversation. I think we did about 25 minutes with him, and then, or maybe 20 minutes. And then Parker Brown, our friend, that was his home court. I mean, he lives 5 minutes away from the conference. He goes to the church that was putting it on. We were kind of coming to his house, and a big shout out to Parker Brown for helping to organize this, getting all these podcasters there. I mean, he did a phenomenal job on kind of hosting. He told us where everything was at, where to go to eat, how to get around, helped run people back and forth and drive them, had extra equipment there for the podcasters. Just an absolute wonderful host with Parker Brown and the Watchwell podcast. Vindicated Productions is his production company, which go support him as well too. And I figured, why not, since it's his home turf, he's the big dog on campus there. That's where everyone was coming. Let's have him close out the conference. And we just talked for 45 minutes, and it was a really cool talk on how we felt about the conference, all the speakers, getting to hang out, kind of a behind the scenes, if you will, from the podcaster's point of view, because we kind of had our own group where we're hanging out with the speakers before they talk and after, and kind of inside jokes and what was going on. So that was very cool to kind of sit down and talk with him and cap it off. So this will be the last of our series on Dangerous Friends. After this, we'll be back to whatever guests that I feel like having on that week, which we do have some great guests coming up over the next couple of weeks. So make sure you tune in. But it's Jamie Bambrick up top, Parker Brown below. I don't know. We got about an hour and 10 here for the total episode. So let's get to it. Next voices you hear will be me and Jamie, and then me and Parker. Or is it me, Jamie and I, Parker and I? Who cares? Who cares about the grammar? Here we go. Yeah, Jamie, welcome back to the podcast. Get that mic right up on your face there, since we got you can move it however you need to. There you go. If you need to come down, up, whatever.
Do with my hand, the Talladega Nights. Yes.
I don't know what to do with my hands. Yeah. Yeah, we're in the podcast room right now, so you guys might be hearing some background noise there, but it's all good. We're at the Dangerous Friends Conference, Toledo, Monclova, Ohio, only about 30 miles from where I'm at. So this is a close one.
Right.
You know, sometimes I'm down in Tennessee. Sometimes I'm in Texas, but this was a nice, close 30-minute one. But good to have you back on. You were on a couple months ago when we were talking about Dangerous Friends.
That's right.
We finally get to meet in person.
Yes.
We were talking about the pro-life issue and things of that nature, but I kind of wanted to, for those who couldn't attend Dangerous Minds, maybe give us, don't give us any spoilers, but could you give us a sneak peek on what you are going to be speaking on?
Yeah, so the premise of what I'm talking on is answering the question, how did we get here?
Okay.
And looking at essentially how culture has ended up in the place that it is in. How we have got to the place that the 5 transgender people in the world seem to run everything, and that tiny lobby of far left activists and so on have got the level of control that they have. When you compare that to the church and the size and the scale of the church, and you go, well, how are those guys winning and why are we not winning? And I'm really going to draw it back to, that's kind of the setup. The answer that I'm going to give to that, and I get that there will be complexities and there'd be more to it than just this, but I think a big factor in all of that is that I think we've shrunk the message of the church. I think we have shrunk what we are meant to do. So I'm going to pull it back to the idea of the kingdom of God. What is the kingdom of God? Because Jesus' message is defined as that. Jesus sent his church with a kingdom commission.
Yeah.
Matthew 28, kingdom language all over it. And yet when you go to most churches, and you can see this played out in different ways. So you can see it in the sort of, seeker-sensitive, attractional church, where it is, we don't preach the kingdom, we just preach personal salvation.
Yeah.
You can see it played out in the gospel-centered movement, where it's like anything that's kind of edgy or, to the right, well, that's not the gospel, so we don't need to talk about that.
Right.
But if we actually go, well, what is the kingdom of God? And this is a slight spoiler, but not too big of a one. I define it as God's will for us. That your will be, your kingdom come, your will be done.
Yeah.
What does God want for us? What does God want from us? We start preaching that. Well, that actually is a big message all of a sudden. That's not a small message just about you and your personal salvation. That's not a message just about, little minor things. That's a serious, big message that actually allows us and requires us to speak into the world in a way that the church has really refrained from doing.
Yeah. No, go ahead. I'm listening.
Yeah.
I'm just playing with my background. For those watching, the background just went out. He's our first interview here, too, so we've got all kinds of...
And I killed the background.
Yeah, we've got all kinds of stuff going on. But no, absolutely.
Yeah.
We'll just shut it off. We don't need it right now. What was so attractive to me, too, in my 20s working through, for me, and we don't align on everything theologically, but Orthodox we align, so we're brothers in Christ. In the Reformed community is this kind of thing of like all of Christ for all of life.
Yeah.
Meaning, and I'm sure you believe that too, it's not distinctly Reformed. It's this weird thing, like you said, you have these... I
would say I'm pretty Reformed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have these little areas where we focus on and we go, oh, but we can't talk about that or can't do that or, can't have any impact there. And it's like, no, whether you eat or drink or anything you do, you're doing it on for the glory of God. That's what the kingdom kind of is, right?
Absolutely,
it's like going to work, hanging with the kids, talking to friends, whatever we're doing, podcasting, conferences, it's all for the glory of God. And it feels like, especially the Western church has kind of abandoned that for the last 40 or 50 years even.
Yeah. I think a big problem, if you were to define it, among the, let's call it the conservative church, so not compromised on theological essentials, right? So not going full woke and not compromised doctrinally, still has a big problem. And the big problem is pietism. It's this idea that actually our faith really doesn't need to be applied in the public square, doesn't need to be applied in the political sphere, doesn't need to be applied on any of the hot button issues. We can shy away from that, and we will do that for the sake of souls, is the the argument. We will do that for
Sure.
the sake of winning people to the gospel. And so, interestingly, though, you contrast that with the earliest initial creed of the church, and I'm just talking. It wasn't an official creed, but their initial little slogan was Christ is Lord. That was the basics.
Yeah.
That is actually a bigger gospel than just that's actually
Sure.
a big claim.
Yeah. Encompasses a lot, doesn't it?
He is in charge of everything.
Yeah.
Like that requires actually that we don't do that. That we don't say, well, he's not really Lord of that, so we can't talk about that. Or
Right.
So I think our problem is, in the name of the gospel, we've shrunk the gospel. And that is a serious problem, and so that's led to a lot of the issues that we see in our day, and we have to do something about that. We really have to get the church to grasp, as you said, absolutely 100% agreed on that, all of Christ for all of life. This is a big message that we have been given. It is the gospel. The gospel is not a small message. Jesus' message was not a small message. It was a big message that encompassed everything, and if we can get back to that, then I think we can get back to making the level of impact that the church should be making and has no reason not to be making in the culture in which we live.
Yeah. Are you seeing similar? You being from across the way in Ireland, are you seeing similarities between the United States, Ireland, with kind of? I mean, you guys have the woke movement and the liberalism and kind of this forsaken of object morality for taking into a subjective morality, which I would say in the United States has been going on for decades. We're just kind of hitting the tip of the spear now of it. Is there similarities there? Is it a different world over there? Like, what's your thoughts when you come here? You go back home. Are we dealing with some of the same issues as two separate countries?
No, we're totally different. Totally dealing with the same issues, rather.
Yeah.
100%. I think one thing that's important to recognize for Americans that you guys probably don't recognize as easily as the rest of us do, is that we really live in the American empire. The entire Anglosphere and the Western world really is and I know it's not a formal empire as such, but it's a soft empire. You're the cultural hegemonic power. And so everything that happens here happens in Europe and happens in Australia and those places where America holds a lot of interest. We listen to the same music, we watch the same shows. Obviously you have mild little tweaks here and there and emphases, but broadly speaking, the bulk of our culture comes from the United States. Where I would say the main difference is, and I think this is a credit to the United States, is that there is a bit more backbone in the church here.
Okay.
There is pushback that really seems absent in most of. I can't speak too much to the rest of Europe because I don't know it. Certainly the UK and Irish church have been terrified. There are just so few people speaking up, so few people being confident in their faith, so few people being willing to. Do you guys say call a spade, or is that like a Northern Irish expression?
No, we say
just being down the line, and again, it's not about being mean or anything like that, but just being straightforward with your faith, unapologetic. Of course Jesus is right, of course God is right, and we're not going to apologize for that. And I don't have to. If I talk about these issues, I don't have to give 16 caveats and apologize that God's so mean for saying that.
Right.
I can actually just say no, God's right, and if you don't agree with him, you're wrong, and you should probably change. In the same way that we should all change and repent and come to the knowledge of Christ, and thankfully by the grace of God have done, continuing to do so in my own life, right? So that's where I would say a little bit of the difference is. I think that the American church is starting to do something positive in that direction, and I'm praying that takes off in the UK. And
it's pretty crazy too, because it's. And I don't want to dwell too much on Ireland, United States, but it is always fun to talk to someone from out of country just to get their experience. One is the size difference, too. You got to realize we have pockets here. We have whole states to where if you go to Rhode Island or Massachusetts, it's like you're in a different world.
Yeah.
With the laws and how liberal they are and what they do, compared to you go to a Texas or an Oklahoma or a Florida and you go, I'm in a different country, but you're in the same country, right? I was watching a video of someone from Europe just saying how, if you drive from New York to California, it'd be the same as driving from Paris to northern Iraq, and you have to go through about 12 countries to get there. So the size is a little is different too. But I agree with you. We do have that little bit of an uprising of people going, okay, enough is enough. I think it took the global COVID pandemic for a lot of churches to go, no, this is some who acquiesced and died.
Yeah.
And then really some who were refined and said, no, this is what we need to stand for. And those churches actually were strengthened.
Yeah.
Which I love, what Satan meant for evil, God means for good, right? He actually strengthened his church through a time of global persecution in a way. But, yeah, man, that's awesome. I think that talk is going to be something that's needed. I love the name of it too, Dangerous Friends.
Yeah,
It is good to have dangerous friends, and you guys are all kind of assassins up on that stage of some sort. Theological, doctrinal, cultural, kind of just going out there and saying exactly the truth, the biblical truth, what you need to say, and you can be a little dangerous, and it's dangerous to have dangerous friends.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's dangerous in multiple ways. I think it's dangerous, in that way of being clear. There's also risk in those friendships,
sure.
right? Because we are different. There are people that we hold genuine areas on secondary matters.
Sure.
Where we will hash it out. But I think that's a good thing. I think iron sharpening iron is necessary. I think it's dangerous to echo chambers and dangerous to your own little bubble. To sometimes just go, actually, God is moving with people that look quite different than I do.
Sure.
But we are so united, and that really does excite. I really think God is doing something in the Western world right now. I think that there is a move happening. Saying this with Parker there, where there's a few things. It's obviously we need to be biblically sound, very different on a whole bunch of other issues, united in facing the challenges.
Yeah.
And there's something happening, and I feel like it's early stages, and it's a cloud the size of a man's hand, and it's not what it needs to be yet. This whole, and I don't mean like clear truth. We might be part of that, and by the grace of God, hopefully we may end up being a part of that. Doesn't matter if we are or not. God is doing something.
Yeah.
God is doing something, and
on the hearts of His
God,
people.
Yeah. He is. He
absolutely
is.
too.
And I see it happening. And I'm seeing it. We're even seeing it happen little ways back in Northern Ireland. It's crazy. Our church has grown by more than 50% in about the last year.
Yeah.
We went from 180, 190 over 300, and it's
awesome.
just
praise God.
Just people coming along with exactly that. And there are people who are a bit different than each other, and we obviously we want to have we be clear on who we are as a church, where you do actually have to go right. Well, we got to be clear on our secondary matters actually matter in a local church context. That's important. But we are going to be courageous, and we are going to unify, and we're going to see what God does, and it's exciting. It really is. So I think there's potential for God to do amazing things through people that are willing to go, we are on the same team. We are facing the same enemies. We have the same scriptures. Let's go. Yeah.
How long have you been a Christian? How many years?
Yeah, well, so I grew up in a Christian home, but I would say that I had a proper, I had a big wobble / walked away. Hard to tell looking back, but a serious following of Christ since 16 years old. So I'm now 35. So that is 20.
There you go. My point to that question was, it's not a litmus test.
I can't do the math, but it's sometime.
It was basically you've been aware of Christianity and kind of what's been going on in that culture for so long, because you're a little younger than me. I'm 43, but I've been around long enough to see the culture go from not kind of paying attention and let's do our own thing over here as Christians and squabbling among ourselves, to seeing the culture kind of take control and become the God and be what it is when the church exits it, to now we are in a very exciting time where we're starting to see God move and that culture start to come back towards Christendom, towards Christianity. And I'm going to be... in 20 years, I will be telling my grandkids about the mid-2000s up until 2025 and 2030. I'm going, I was alive then when we started to. Sometimes it's because sometimes it's hard to see it when you're in it.
Yeah.
Right. You're talking about it right now, but I really truly believe we are in this. It might be a 10, 15-year shift where we go, oh wow, that's when people return to Christ, a true reformation, a true revival. Sometimes it's it's a little bit by little bit, but we're going to look back in 10 years and go, wow, there was a turning point, probably around 2015, 16, 17 into right now. Guys like you were part of it, obviously, And it's kind of exciting to see the Lord move on men's hearts and to do his will.
Yeah. I think part of it is, I mean, the thing that really got me to take the gloves off as such and go, right, because my background was sort of mega church, and I have no problem with like that style, and I had a lot of good things to say about people in that, like I genuinely do. Big problem was that they weren't willing to face a lot of the actual controversial issues that were going to tear the church apart, right? So that was a big issue. But I don't mind style. I don't mind churches doing things well. I don't mind them pursuing excellence. All that. I have no problem with that. But at some point, I took the gloves off, and it was in 2020, and I just have realized at that point that it's actually existential for the future of our nations. You know, there's an existential crisis that is happening, particularly in the UK. I look at what's happening in the UK. In my lifetime, if God does not show up and do something profound, then it will. I mean, we basically have a communist leader. We do. Keir Starmer, the current prime minister, was what's called a Pabloite, which is a subsection of Trotskyism.
Oh, wow.
So, and he has never turned away from that. He has hidden that. And they're not enacting all of that, but that is his ideology, and many of the others within them. I mean, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, the person in charge of our economy, either her or the Foreign Secretary, removed a picture of Winston Churchill and replaced it with the founder of the British Communist Party in the government accommodation that they receive. So they all live in Downing Street. So it's not just the Prime Minister; they're all in there, and so that's where we're at. So we'll either be a communist nation or we will be an Islamic nation. And the church is just going to sit there and
that's crazy to think of all the rich theological things that have come out of Ireland.
Right? Yeah. Well,
unreal.
This is the UK.
The rich history. UK. Oh, well, UK and Ireland. I'm just saying in general.
Ireland's doing the same thing, and you go, oh, that's like if I just can't sit there and do nothing about that.
Yeah.
I can't sit there and go, right, well, so long as my congregation grows,
right,
that'll be fine. It's like, no, that won't be fine. Like, we have to do something. We have to do it now. We have to speak up. Like, now is the time. If we don't do it, it's probably too late anyway.
Yeah.
Although it's never too late with God. But, you know, it's getting very, very close. And so if I don't have a go now, then there will be no opportunity. Yeah. Like, our children and our grandchildren will pay the price at a much higher price because we refuse to pay it at this point.
Yeah.
So for me, that was like, well, that's what I'm living for. That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm going to spend my life doing.
Yeah.
That's why I'm not leaving. You know, I'll stay there, and you know, that if I can make some impact there, that's what I hope.
You know, what's exciting about that too is the generation that's younger than both of our generations is turning to that type of mentality. Yeah. The Generation Alpha, the Generation Z. The zeal that they have for biblical truth, theology, doctrine, church. The elder millennials have turned away, fallen off. The boomers are maybe attending church. But you go poll Gen Z and Alpha, which Alpha's, 12, 13, 14, 15. And they're in youth group right now, or youth. In droves coming back to, because they've been living under a whole generation of subjective morality and whatever you feel is right. And they go, well, no, that doesn't line up with even how I'm created as a human. I know that there's right and wrong. Where's the truth, right? I think the next fight for that will be, honestly, will be between the fundamentalist Muslims, probably Orthodoxy, Eastern Orthodoxy. It's going to be, where will they go to find a truth, right? But I think it's exciting that the Lord is turning the heart of the younger generation, just like he did for you. And I'm very optimistic about the future. We can sit here and talk about the political stuff, and I'm in politics, and sometimes you get very jaded and down, and like you're saying. But at the same time, you go, boy, am I optimistic about the future when I talk to a 15-year-old and they're just desiring the truth of God and want to see him move, and right? Yeah. And you go, oh, wow, this is how the Lord works. He works generationally. Sometimes we get caught up in our 3-year or 5-year little view.
Yeah. Well, I think it's very interesting. So the Bible talks about, God holding sins against the third and fourth generation, right? And you kind of go through and you go, right, well, you've got your if you think about the 60s, well, it wasn't the greatest generation, the one before them, whatever that was. I can't remember the name of it. Then you got the greatest generation. Then you've got your Gen Xers, and then you've got your millennials.
Boomers, Gen X, boomers, then millennials.
So you've got all of those. So it was greatest generation, boomers, Gen X, millennials, right? You got like 4 generations there.
Yeah.
I think that's about as long as a society can go pursuing nonsense.
That's a T-shirt right there.
I think that's about as far as you can go. I think that's part of why the sins are held against the third. I don't think you can make a society. I don't think you can make a generation last much longer than that before the next generation goes, those guys are all crazy. What were they doing?
Right.
And there needs to be a turnaround at that point. There can be a turnaround. I think that's part of that anyway. So I am bullish on the next generation.
Yeah.
Certainly in a broad sense.
Our forgetfulness can be a common grace sometimes.
Yeah.
Where you have a fourth generation forgetting the folly of the great-great-great-grandfather, right?
Yeah,
or not carrying on that bad tradition or whatever.
Yeah,
it is a nice kind of common grace that we can be reset. Sometimes it can be a detriment, right? That's why God had to keep telling the Israelites every generation, I'm the God who brought you out of Egypt. You got to remember. But at the same time, too, there's a common grace in that, and saying, like I said, the Gen Zs are looking back going, what? Yeah. We're not going to do what the boomers did and what the Gen X did and things like that. We want truth, man. We don't want to go by what we feel. That's getting us anxiousness. That's getting us depression. Right?
Yeah.
What is truth? And then if you have a Bible preaching, Bible believing, not only shepherd, but you have Christians that are actually discipling, right? I have a T-shirt on my shop that says we need less pastors and more disciples. It's a little facetious, but it's saying, why don't we all be disciples like we're supposed to be and not think that we're going to take our friend to church on Sunday and the pastor's going to save him with the sermon. How about you live out the gospel and disciple, right? Like I said, I'm very encouraged in that, but I think we're on this. We agree there. Before we get out of here, I don't want to keep you too much longer. Can you shout out to everyone where they can find you, follow you, what you got going on, promote the heck out of something for us?
Sure, yeah.
What's up?
DangerousFriends25.com is this conference.
Yep.
So they can, if anybody's watching, I can see that. You can follow me, Jamie Bambrick, Bambrick. Jamie Bambrick is how I'd pronounce it. Jamie Bambrick is how the Americans would pronounce it. So it's not Jimmy, it's Jamie.
Jamie.
And so I go under my own name on YouTube and on Twitter.
Nice.
So search for me there. That's what I'm doing. And feel free. Please follow and subscribe and all
cool.
that. Yeah.
Guys, we'll link up, if you're watching, we'll link up everything where you can click through, follow Jamie, get a hold of his content. We're going to be putting together 15, 20-minute clips all weekend long with Dangerous Friend guests. So we don't know who's coming up next, but you'll see here. Remember, as always, you can find out more at dmwpodcast.com. I'm trying to do my outro here, and I got Parker over here with his screen. Go ahead. Do it for the camera. Go ahead.
We've
Go
heard
ahead, Parker.
it like 15 times.
There we go.
Yeah. So it's...
There you go. Take two. Remember, you can go to the website, dmwpodcast.com. Get some snarky merch like Wine 'em, Dine 'em, Romans 9 'em, or our new T-shirt, Job 13:5. How about you shut up and let that be your wisdom? Sometimes you just have to quote scripture to the pagans if they don't like it. As always, remember, the chief end of man is to glorify God and enjoy him forever. God bless. All right, we're rolling, baby.
All right.
Wrap-up show. Last episode from the Dangerous Friends 25 conference. We are here in the stomping grounds of Parker Brown. This is his home church, his home territory. Mm-hmm. Heck, I think you got most of the podcasters here.
I did.
You little rascal.
It's not, I didn't do anything. I just threw a text out on.
And we all said, yeah, we get to hang out with Parker. Let's go.
Yeah, you get the conferences going and the podcasters just come out to play.
Yeah. So we've had.
Roaches. They just.
I've been right next to you in the podcast booth. It's been awesome. I've walked through your shot a couple times, so I'm sorry for that.
It's okay.
Because unlike me, you have beautiful audio and video because that's what you do, Vindicated Productions.
Yeah.
Watch Well Podcast, all that good stuff. But
VindicatedProductions.com.
Vindicated, my man. Yeah, throw it out there. Shout out Vindicated.
I'm really bad at the shameless plug, and Greg's teaching me to get better
That's
at the
right.
shameless plug.
Hey, if you do something well, you need to tell people about it so they can patronize you. And we all need to patronize our friends for sure. Great conference. It was a 2-dayer, but 2 long days. I got here about 10 o'clock yesterday, even though it didn't start till the evening. I think you were here when I got here, so you were here early. Yeah. And Steve Dace, Rosario Butterfield, Seth Gruber, Jamie Bambrick, John Roseman, Michael Foster. Most of those have been on, and you guys will be seeing, if you're watching this, you've seen most of those videos. Keith Brown, our in-house producer who's going to Google stuff for us if we need it.
Yep.
He's got the phone right there.
Yep.
What was the best part for you? I mean, I was right next to you. I know you sat in on some of the talks. We actually watched them here on the monitor in the podcast hall. You interviewed all kinds of people.
what was the best part for you? We wrap this up.
I don't like the word best.
Okay.
They were all so good. I really resonated with Seth Gruber. I liked his
High
marathon.
energy.
Can we call it a marathon?
Yeah.
It was a
We
marathon.
almost went 2 hours.
Yeah, he did. And then this was the first time I've heard Rosaria.
Yeah.
So that was really good.
What was some of the stuff you were talking about on Watchwell? Because that's a fun one. So I got to imagine if I'm a speaker, if I'm a Steve Dace or I'm a Seth Gruber, and I'm going through all these podcasts, we're asking them basically the same questions. What'd you speak about? What about this theology thing? What about this thing that you do? And then they get to you and you're like, what's your favorite movie? And we're going to dig into it for a half hour and find out if you really do like it. I mean, if I was a speaker or a guest, I would think that's refreshing. So what kind of things were you asking them?
I mean, we talked movies. We talked a lot of. I just wanted to get to know the speakers, this time around. So
okay,
it was a little different. But we did touch on some of the movies and how movies affect culture and how what I try to do is really. I like to see what the speakers are like their message.
Yeah.
And then I try to meet that with like, okay, well, how is their message affecting like entertainment?
Okay.
How are we seeing like cultural response on social media? How are we watching that well? How are with Rosaria? How is the LGBTQ? Right, like Seth does.
The alphabet soup,
the alphabet
guys.
soup.
Yeah.
How is that affecting entertainment and movies? And now it's a whole genre, right? So like, I think it's just super interesting to use movies as a foundation for where to go and how culture is being affected by it.
I think it's kind of underrated. We kind of underrate how effective movies are because they're just storytelling, right?
Yeah.
And we've had storytellers since we were in tribes.
Mm-hmm.
And the chief,
even back to like the parables,
right? Yeah. Well, I was saying even farther back than that when we were, when we would refer to sons and they had sons as tribes, the 12 tribes of Israel, you literally had just clans and tribes of people, and you had elected one person to be the one who passed on the stories and the traditions and
legends
the pitfalls and the, all that. And that's what movies are nowadays. I think Christians who are actually concerned about the culture, that's why they understand that we need to kind of not only take back dominion over that, but also talk about those things openly, like what you're doing, right?
Yeah,
like actually having a conversation about how does this affect us? How should we be watching it? What should we be doing?
Yeah. So like, I mean, you read a book or you watch a movie or social media, and oftentimes we just kind of assume what is being presented is true.
Yeah.
You read even if you read like a theology book, it's really easy with someone who in a relatively short time span can bring about an argument or a point and back it with scripture, and then you just halfway through the book you're like, oh man, like I believe this right? And then then you got to take a step back and you got to be like, okay, well, is the argument good, and start thinking a little bit more free. Cross-reference it with scripture. Those kinds of things. So I would say we just kind of do that same thing with movies. What are the eternal truths that are building the narrative, and then is the movie itself, is the message in the movie refuting the narrative in which it was built upon?
Yeah. Well, what's really wild about that, as I shifted my noisy seat here,
they're comfortable.
Yeah. Most people watch movies, I think. I've heard so many times like, hey, I just want to like veg out and just forget about, just relax and just watch, right? And it's almost like this passive watching to where whatever like the worldview is of that storyteller, that movie just kind of seeps into our brain and we don't even think twice about it. It's the craziest way how we can really use movies as propaganda because they're entertainment, but what's going on with the main character and the subplot and the way they're talking and the way they interact with each other. Those are all very important things. And then you're actually saying, no, maybe we should like critically and actively watch movies,
so
right?
Like the shirt. So another shameless plug. Sorry, the shirt that we have here. That's our brand new. It's called the Brainwash Tee.
Okay.
And on the front it says "Watch well or die."
Yeah.
And on the back it's got a really cool. It's got a really cool design where it's this TV and it's got the hypnosis Illuminati kind of
We'll
thing.
link it up, guys. If you're watching this, you can click below right now and you can get the T-shirt.
And it just says the words, something to the effect of bringing death to the passive consumption of media.
Yeah, of media, yeah.
Right? So if you're watching passively, what worldview is creeping in?
Yeah.
Like what, indoctrination happens. There's no neutrality is a myth, right? So what is happening as you're watching these stories, and what are you not realizing that you're believing, right?
Yeah, so my wife and I, we've actually taken to, when we watch a movie with our kids, and this is from a very young age, we have a discussion about it afterwards.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And it also allows the kids to watch some more mature movies outside of grotesque, maybe sexual things and stuff like that, but maybe some movies where parents would say, they're a little too young for that. But when you have a 20, 30-minute chat afterwards and you say, well, do you think that violence was necessary in that movie? Do you think that person disrespecting that person, the authority figure in this movie, was it a godly demonstration of authority or was it authoritarian, right? And I found that by doing that, not only do you open yourself up to a wider variety of art that even younger children can consume because you're normalizing it and having them think about it, but it isn't passive, just like what you're doing. It's not just watching it and then propagating. No, let's critically think about this. Let's analyze
the movie.
It's
just discipleship.
Yeah,
it's just a different form of discipleship. What you're doing with your kids, right? Or at least that's what I do with my kids. We watch we watched a movie like one of the recent movies was The Wild Robot. We've watched like Super Mario, and they're a movie that has a message throughout the journey of the movie and the narrative of the movie. They're going to make moral claims.
Right.
And you're going to see things that happen in the movie that you could turn to your kid and be like, okay, well, what do you think about that? Even at 5.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think about that? Oh, well, he hit him and that's wrong. Okay, well, why is that wrong?
Yeah.
Even something that simple.
Very true.
And it's just it's a fun way to be a parent and do that. It's a fun way to, evangelize your friends and family it's a community-based thing when you sit down and watch a movie together and you do movie night. Yeah. And then it's usually is like you talk about the movie, or at least you used to. I don't know if people do it nowadays, but you would go to the movie theater with your friends, you watch a movie, and then you get done, and then you start talking about it. And if it doesn't get to worldview, then you're not really doing a good job critiquing the movie. So we do that, and it's a lot of fun.
Let me ask you this, because I don't think I've asked you, and you've been on the podcast before. Why did you start this podcast? What was the reasoning behind it?
To be honest,
and how did you land on the idea of what you're doing, of basically not passively watching movies?
So this is something that my cousin and I used to do when we would grow up. We'd watch movies, we'd talk about it, and that's kind of how the conversations would usually go. The idea originally came from my cousin. I went to him, we were talking, hanging out, and I was like, man, I really want to start a podcast, but I don't really have the idea. But he had the idea, and it was originally, this was many, many years ago, it started as a blog.
Right. That's
Nick,
right. Okay, you did tell me that.
Nick.
Yeah.
So, you...
shout out, Nick.
Yeah. So Nick had this idea for a blog. He was going to college at Ball State, and it just never really got published.
Yeah.
So he wrote a few of the first, articles of watching movies well, and it never got started. And then years later, he got plugged into a church after he graduated. Maybe 10 years later or something like that. And he was in charge of their youth group at church. And then he started the idea as a youth group, like movie night.
Yeah.
So that's what he would do is the kids would come over, the high school kids would come over. They would watch a movie, and then they would do like a watch well episode, like what we do on the podcast, in their house, and there'd be a group of people, and they would get talk back and forth of why things were said and what happened and morality and love and all of these different things.
Yeah.
Saw great fruit from that, and then when we got linked up talking about starting a podcast, he was like, well, I had this idea a long time ago. It was a blog, never got started. He sent me the first episode, or the first article that he wrote. And I was like, this is the podcast, dude. This is what we're doing.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
Yeah.
And so that's
very cool.
That's how it started.
Yeah, I haven't listened to the last few episodes. Has Nick been on? Is he still?
Yeah. So we did our...
Because I feel like I met Nick once. I see you everywhere.
The schedules have been really...
You hustle at these conferences.
Yeah. The schedules have been tough recently, but...
Is it crazy how tough it is to get two guys together in a room for an hour or two?
It's really hard. But I think we do an okay job. We make it work, and I think that we've got really good strengths, and we complement each other really well as co-hosts.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, we just did our live stream on the Oscars.
For the Oscars, yeah. How was that?
That was like 4 hours long, dude. It was.
That's a marathon.
We watched the Oscars, so you don't have to.
Right.
It really actually it was boring. I mean, people are gonna laugh and be like, "Well, duh, it's the Oscars," but it wasn't as political as it has been in the
years past.
And
Yeah.
it was. There was
Interesting.
a lot of movies that I think. I mean, it was a tough competition. I haven't seen quite a few of the movies, but the ones that I did see I think are good enough to win. But yeah, that's our thing. We love it. We want to reach more people and get more people to I think we need to make going to the movie theater fun again.
Yeah.
There's something that's been lost in that, and I think it's mostly streaming.
And
you can buy it home. People don't want to get, which there's a place for that too, right? You got all the kids on the couch or whatever, and you got the popcorn going and the blankets on. I get
or
that.
At the very least, invite people over to do a movie night, stuff like that, and then talk about it.
But we have a really nice movie theater up by where I live, and it was funny because I hadn't been to the movies in years and years and years, and I think we just went, I don't know, maybe we saw Sonic Hedgehog 3, the kids, because they're young enough to where they kind of started watching that years ago where they were younger, and now so they're like, yeah, let's go see 3. And I remember getting the tickets because someone gave me like a $50 gift card or a $100 gift card to this place, to the theater. And I was like, okay, that should pay for, 4 of us. It was $5.25 a ticket before you go, if it's before 6. And we're homeschoolers, so it's like we're out of school at like 1 o'clock. We're like, yeah, let's go do the 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
I was like, $5.20. It costs $5 to rent it from my television.
Yeah.
If I want to get it in HD.
Well,
and
it depends on if it's a new release. It's like 20.
20,
Yeah.
right? And I mean, the theater I go to, you got heated seats, recliners, you got the whole thing. And I'm going, I feel like those prices have not gone up that much in how many years? And that's because
really it's the prime times, the opening night.
But even then,
like that.
I checked that. It's like $8.
Yeah.
Like the movies are actually pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
And it's a cool communal experience. So yeah, I'm saying all that to agree with you. It probably should be, we should, make movies great again, basically.
We really
make
do.
movie theaters great again.
We really do.
It's pretty cool.
I want to know your story. How did yours get started? I don't think I've asked you.
It was basically, I was always talking with, we hang out at these conferences, and we were having talks around dinner tables and at church and with friends. And about 6 months prior, in 2019, I told my wife that summer, I said, man, maybe I should get into podcasting. I've been listening to him. At that point, I was an early adopter. I was listening to Joe Rogan when he was still...
What year was this?
2019 is
2019.
Yeah, is when I was initially talking about it. But I've been listening to podcasts since 2008 or 9.
Okay.
When the day the podcast app came, and iTunes University, it used to be called, came out on iPhone, I downloaded it, and I was watching stuff from Oxford and listening to people, and it wasn't even called podcasting then. It was iTunes University. So early adopter of that, and then my wife goes, yeah, maybe you should start a podcast, Like, I don't know. And then summer goes by, winter. Actually, that January, we go to Maui for 2 weeks with some other couples. As we're flying out, some person on the plane goes, yeah, I heard some person got this thing called COVID on the island, this new thing called COVID. It was January 2020. And by the time we landed, we'd been in Maui for 2 weeks, sun, beautiful, gorgeous. 9 hours later, by the time we land, Maui shut down, 24 inches of rainfall, everything's flooded. It hadn't rained for 2 weeks there, and we were in the rainy season.
That's crazy.
So it was crazy. Like, we left, and the whole world changed from Maui back to Michigan. And, 2 months later in Michigan, the governor said, nope, you're absolutely shut down. Can't even go outside. My wife said, maybe now's a good time to start a podcast, Go talk into a microphone.
Who must not be named.
What's that?
That woman who must not be named.
Samantha, my wife. I think I've talked about her before.
No, the woman that shut down Michigan.
Oh, yeah, Big Gretch, who got reelected in Michigan, of all things. I mean, it was horrendous.
Yeah.
Her husband's famous for yelling at the guy in the boat marina saying, I'm the husband of the governor, get my boat out. And you're not even supposed to have boats out. It was during COVID. It was during a lockdown. So, whatever.
The law, what is it? The law applies to thee, but not me.
Yeah, rules for me or rules for thee, not for me. So anyway, I had a guy that I was going to church with, and I knew from high school, Jason Hamlin. He lived 5 houses down, and I said, "Hey, would you?" And he was like exploring Reformed theology and was like really into Doug Wilson at the time, and just was hyped up on that. And he goes, "I go, would you want to do this with me?" And he's like, "Sure, let's do Sunday nights. I'll walk down. It's 5 houses down." We'd pour 2 fingers of scotch or bourbon, and we flip on the record and go at it. And we did that for almost 2 years. He had to move away, got a different job. It was just too hard to do stuff on Zoom. He was just like, I got to step back from it. I said, that's fine. And it's been going. It'll be 5 years in April since then, and just kind of grown and snowballed, and get to meet guys like you. And
so it's crazy.
Really
so I don't know if I've told you this, but I really struggled with friends. Let's see. So, we talk about Reformed theology a lot and all these things. Well, I was not aware of a lot of this stuff 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And so like I started listening to these other sermons, and I was like, wait, it's like kind of like it was like a revelation almost.
Sure.
I was like, oh my gosh, look, this is a whole world.
How old are you?
32.
Okay, so this is my testimony.
Is it?
I was 25 to 29. I was like, 25 to 32 in this exploratory phase, and then basically, I called it a closeted Calvinist. I didn't tell anyone.
Well, I thought John Calvin was a bad guy.
So did I.
Yeah,
I grew up.
That
so and Jonathan Edwards, and they're just weird. There's something weird going on with them. They're okay, but don't really get into them. Yeah.
And so I started, going down this journey and learning all of this new stuff and figuring out and so it was like undoing my confidence because I just hadn't, and so we'd be doing these life groups just with your average Western Christian evangelifish person, right?
Yeah.
And like some of them were like the life group's too deep. Like it's too deep.
You're like, wait a minute, it's not deep enough.
Wait a minute, we just read the Bible.
Right.
Like we just read the Bible.
Yeah.
Like if that's too deep, I don't like. What are we doing?
What are we doing here, man? Yeah.
I was like, man, I'm just so tired. I just want good, not necessarily exclusive to Reformed theology, but I just want good, godly, theologically sound men in my life. That was a prayer.
Yeah.
That I prayed. I was
that's how most people. That's how most guys come to the Reform.
I'm like, I want friends that know the Bible, that can raise me up, and I prayed that, and then all of these things started happening. I got these mentors in my life.
Yeah.
Fight Laugh Feast happened 4 weeks later, or so. It was like, and then I met you and Keith and Corey and all these guys, and it's like, man, you guys were just and it's in this church. Me coming to this church was an answer to prayer.
Yeah.
We do our associate pastor. We do his name's Mike Edwards.
Was he the other guy on stage with Steve?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. He's kind of like the MC through the conference.
Yep.
And he we do a theology nerds club. Our wives make fun of us.
That's awesome.
And we do we read Joe Booth's book, and we're going through deeper theology, and stuff like that. I think our next book's gonna be church history, but right now we're doing concise theology.
Yeah.
J.I. Packer. But anything my point is I was just in this place where it's like, man, I don't have any people around me that are like me.
Yeah.
Or at least that I want to be like in the future. I want to grow, and I had a deep hunger for more. And then it just presented itself. And there were a few decisions that I had to make to go pursue it as well. So it's not just handed to you, you know. But yeah, you guys are a huge part of my life.
It's kind of cool how most of the time the Lord knows the desires of your heart. It lines up with His will, but it's still not like He just drops it in your lap.
You have to pursue it.
There's still some pursuit. There's still using skills. I don't know if I'd necessarily like to say I'm partnering with God. That sounds like it's 50-50. If there's any partnership, it's 99.9 and 0.01, right? In my view. But I'm also a firm believer, and we just don't go, well, where's everything I asked for, God? Well, he does
He's not a
require
genie.
you to work and right. So you had a desire, but then you're also working towards things, and then the Lord provides with those type of friendships in your life. And for me, it was very hard because like I said, I was closeted Calvinist, but at the same time in like study Bible groups, and when I'm at church and someone would say something about the Bible, and I kind of go, well, this is what the Bible says, and I believe. And you very quickly, if you're in like a charismatic church, or even kind of like I was at a very conservative AG church where they didn't really raise their hands or do any of the baptism, the Holy Spirit stuff. You're kind of ostracized a little bit when you start talking about sovereignty of God and election and depravity, and
it's like they thumb your nose,
and they're like, "What? No, he's the weirdo." So for years, almost a decade, every church I attended, I was just kind of the.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think they thumb their nose at it? Why do you think?
Because in the Western Church, we have been inundated with an ideology and a theology that's only specific to the United States in the last 150 years.
Yeah.
That is the Arminian, charismatic, pre-mill. That's 150 years prevalent.
Yep.
You go to
but the people that I meet, it's like a blend of Calvinism and Arminianism.
Okay.
So it's like, God's sovereign, but I still have the free will to choose.
Sure.
Which is kind of just Calvinism.
Well, but that's the thing too, is like, but how are you defining your terms though? So that's the hard part, because when most people say free will, they're saying libertarian free will. I can choose to do whatever I want.
My sovereignty.
Right, well, they're saying
I'm sovereign over. I have the ability to choose salvation.
No, they're saying like I have the ability to choose Coke or Diet Coke at lunch today, right?
Yes.
And I'm saying free will is defined as you're bound to what your nature is,
yes,
right?
That's right.
If you have a total libertarian free will, go climb up on the roof and jump off and fly away. You can't. You're not a bird. Your nature is not to fly,
Amen.
right?
Yep.
Our nature is to sin. So we are bound to that sin. We do not have free will under sin. So we very well have free will in the choice of the bubble of sin nature. We definitely don't. I mean, Romans is very clear. No one's righteous. No one chooses God. Not anyone does anything good. We don't have that free will to choose God. That's outside of our nature. So it's this weird thing where, yes, in a sense,
well,
and
then
even
you have the potter and the clay too, in like Jeremiah and, and what Romans 9.
Yeah.
So,
which that's the funny thing to me, when reading through that, Paul even answers the number one question that people always have. I would go to people and say, well, God elects, God chooses, he's responsible for salvation. And people would literally look at me and go, well, then why would God even find fault in my sin then? Like, why? How can he blame me for anything? And I go, Paul answers that. And they go, what? He says, you don't get to ask God why. And no one likes that answer. No. Why don't we like that answer? Because it's our pride. We want to know, God. You need to, and God goes,
it's not up to us.
You don't get to ask me why I choose whom I choose and I don't who I don't. And you think, well, that seems like I'm picking God's picking favorites, and it's like, but that's in the view of who you are as sinful human.
Your morality is better than God.
Yes, when you're looking at a righteous, holy, omnipotent, immutable being, that is absolutely just.
Yeah, it is.
James,
it's a miracle he even says he saves one. Is that what you're going to say?
Well, I was just going to say James White has a great book called The Potter's Freedom that I had read back in my 20s, and it explains all that much better than I can. But my point is I think that, one, we're inundated with a very, very specific ideology. It's only unique. Like I was saying, you go over to Britain, you go to Jamie Bambrick's country in Ireland, you go to most of the UK, all kinds of Reformed. You go to Holland, Reformed. You go to Scotland, Reformed. And it's because, and now they might not be prevalent or practicing, but that theology is there because that was the Protestant Reformation grew over there and then came over here through the Dutch. That's why you have a big Dutch Reformed even in Michigan here in Grand Rapids, not too far from where we're sitting right now. And then, but then you have the First and Second Awakening that kind of takes over. It goes, and Darby's a big part of that. It goes, oh, no. We're pre-mill. We're dispensational, not covenantal. We're charismatic. We're not cessationist. We believe it, right? And that's only been
then you get to Left Behind books.
And then you get to the Left Behind books, right? And so that's only 150 years of 2,000 years of church history, 6,000 really years. So, well, I'm saying, just step back for a minute, right? If I've got, if I have to cover 6,000 feet and the first 150 feet of it is my journey, that's not too bad. But 6,000 feet's a long time. That's another, 6,350 feet of church history that we just pretty much ignore for the most part in America.
Well, and that's why I love the idea of this conference, is because it's post-denominational, so it exposes everybody to all the different types of doctrine so that you can actually wrestle with it and really come, take ownership of your own faith and what you believe and do the work. Like, that's the idea, is like do the work so that you know and that you can defend it. Yeah. And so,
even my dad, who I go round and round with, I just talked to him. It's so funny because about once a month we'll just have a long phone conversation. We just keep going round and round because he's like, he's not reformed in his faith. He believes in the sovereignty of God, but he'd be more in the provisionalist camp where it's like general satisfaction. God provides a way. Yes, he elects and he draws, but you have to choose him. Mm-hmm. And it just keeps going round and round. You go, well, if God draws, but then I have to choose. Well, how does God choose who draws? Well, it's his decision. So then he's still ultimately in control over your salvation, right?
Does he believe in regeneration?
What's that?
Does he believe in regeneration?
I mean, regeneration is a word that the Reformed use, but everyone believes in regeneration. New creature in Christ is all that is. Your heart is made new. Is regenerated.
I guess the order is what I'm saying. Because if you're if you're choosing, then something has to precede the choice. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is your point, which if that's true, then God would still be sovereign. Yeah. He would be electing.
So it's this weird thing to where, even people in my family, but that's also a secondary issue.
Yeah, yeah.
Like whether, now I would say, I would think that my understanding of God's sovereignty helps me to understand God more and love him more and be sanctified more and all those things, because I view God as that. I think it's more beneficial for someone to have that view, but I don't think it's heretical to say, well, I also choose, right? It's just like baptism, secondary issue. In my cage stage now, 15, 16 years ago, I mean, you couldn't tell me nothing. I mean, if you were like, I'm an Arminian, I'm like, you idiot. Is Corey, looked like he was laughing over there. Did you go through a cage stage, Corey? We got Corey Wing here from Civically Minded off camera. Are you assuming I'm out of He's like, I'm a middle-aged man in cage stage still. Yeah. I would say I've calmed down quite a bit. This actually helps. The podcast helps because I talk to all kinds of people that have different ideas, all I would say within Orthodox Christianity, but it allows me to go, okay, well, you just talk a little bit and tell me what and I've learned to listen a little bit more. Yeah. Well, not this episode. It seems like I'm doing most of the talking. Yeah. But what was the original question? It's been a long 2 days.
I don't know where.
I'm rambling.
Yeah. I guess my point was I think it does the Christian a disservice when they're not exposed.
Oh, 100%.
I really 100%. Because I had this initial feeling of being lied to.
Yeah.
It was like, I was just in this. It's a little harsh to use the word cult. I don't mean cult.
No,
but it's
one way of thinking.
Silo.
Yeah.
It
happens all the way around though. I've got people in my Reformed Presbyterian church. They're second generation. They've grown up in the church. Their kids have had kids, and I've literally they're 23 years old, and I forget that they're only 23 and I'm 43 and I've got 20 years on them. But I'll talk to them about like baptism of the Holy Spirit and how some churches believe it. And they go, "What are you talking about?" And I'm like, "Oh, we're failing our Reformed brothers here because they can recite the Institutes to me. They know the doctrines of grace. They know every great Reform, John Owen, the church history, but they don't know there's a group down the street that believe in a second baptism of the Holy Spirit, and they're going to meet those guys out there, and some of those guys are going to have scripture and verse ready, and they're going to go, this is why we believe it, and they're going to be very convincing. So it happens in Reformed churches. It happens in evangelical, right? Like when you get into one way of thinking.
That's a good point.
But also I think sometimes that comes just from the type of personality you have. I've always been a person like, I want to read everything about this subject, the pros, the cons, right? So that comes more naturally. So that's, in my maturity too, I've realized I can't judge people on that either. Just because something comes a little easier to me and it makes me
or even like curiosity.
The curiosity makes me seem more intelligent on a subject. I'm not. It's just, I just wanted to know, right? And some people go, that's not fun for me. Reading a theology book on a religion that I don't believe in at night, go pound sand. I'm not going to do that. I like to do that. Yeah, right. So it's like, right. So it's like a weird thing to where
But to your point, you can't discredit the simple faith.
Right.
you know, my grandmother passed, let's see, just this past Christmas. And it was during Fight Laugh Feast.
The name from Beyond the Wall.
I was being general, but he's like, you liar, you lied on Greg's podcast. No, and she had a simple faith. You know, she wasn't the one that was gonna read the Reformed doctrines of.
It's not required.
It's not. You know, you're not saved. Yeah, it's not required.
I think, now this might be controversial to say, and we got Keith Foskey sitting across the way there, so plug your ears. I got two pastors. We got two pastors here, so we got to have them plug
far
theirs.
Above us.
But I have a feeling there are going to be a lot. We're gonna get to glory one day, and we're going to be looking around for that theologian scholar that wrote all those books, that knew all those things, and we're going to go, where's he at? He's not here up here. And then there's going to be someone that we knew and went, boy, struggled with addiction, struggled with that, this and that and the other, real piece of work for most of my life, and go, what are you doing here? Like, we are not the sweet spot of righteousness. You know what's
really funny
Christ
about that?
is.
Like, even
and I know that sounds very mega churchy.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's the God's honest truth. Because one, only God can judge heart. I don't know what their faith is. Works does not save us. Head knowledge does not save us.
Yeah.
So be very careful when you say, well, that guy's got
correct doctrine.
13 correct. Well, I mean,
to a degree.
I mean, theology, doctrine, I guess, secondary doctrine. But it's weird because it's like, but the books won't save you.
Yeah, but,
and that's
here, real quick.
Yeah.
So you said, I just don't want to lose my thought. So you said, we would look at the person, the drug addict or whatever. Like, what are you doing here? And that drug addict could look back at us and say, well, what are you doing here?
Right.
Because we aren't any different.
Yeah. Well, no,
but that's the point.
I mean, that's what God. That's why God has to see Christ's righteousness in us, because we all shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like his visible sin is no worse than my hidden sin.
Right. And if you're guilty of breaking
the law, one law,
you're guilty of all of it.
Yeah. So it's this weird thing too, to where by God's grace, I can also see the blind spots even within like Reformed churches and Reformed community. It's not the be all and say all. I would argue to the death with someone over the doctrines of grace versus not believing them. But I can also say I see a weird kind of like intellectual headiness sometimes with us. Like, but I know this, and you, ye of little reading.
Yeah, you peasant.
And then you read a verse where Jesus says, "Come unto me like a child." And why does a child go to a parent? Is it because he's read 5 books and understands the authority figure that's in front of him, or does he just love him because he knows I'm safe, he protects me? And there's a connection there. He's my dad.
Yeah.
I'm family. It's no more heady than that.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's weird too then. So there's got to be like, the older I get, the more I realize too, like, they say cleanliness is next to godliness. Dude, moderation in everything is next to godliness. I feel like in literally everything, in theology, in liquor, in smoking, in talking, in thinking, like a balanced moderation.
Yep. Balance. Yep.
Man, and I haven't achieved any of it yet.
Well, you asked me.
I'm trying to get there one day.
Well, sanctification takes
time.
It's
going to take me up to the day I die for sure.
That's right. And even then it won't be good enough. So you asked me what my favorite, what's your favorite?
Favorite what?
Part of the conference.
What was my favorite? Well, first of all, I love the size. I love big conferences, and this wasn't a small conference, but it's a nice medium-sized conference because I can get around all the sponsors, talk to everyone, and it's kind of like a big, oversized family meeting. But I've never seen Seth Gruber speak, so that was awesome because I really wasn't even aware of him until 6 months ago. Rosario, another one. That was probably one of my... I watched, on the way down here yesterday, I listened to her hour-long testimony, and it's phenomenal, which is what she kind of gave here. A little bit different.
Yeah, I talked to her, too, and I just was like, hey, I want to get to know you, so let's just talk about you for a little bit.
Yeah.
And she just kind of told her testimony, and it was great.
Talk about someone who, smart, intellectual, but then also God moved in her spirit, too.
Courageous, bold.
Yeah.
Like to have your whole life wrapped up in one thing and then just completely undo it all.
Yeah, and I'm gonna do a Zoom with her because she only had about 20 minutes, and I was like, I want to do like an hour with you, and she's like, more than welcome. So if you guys are watching this right now and you're going, where's Rosario on these clips?
we're doing a separate whole episode with just her because I think it's very powerful. Even the way she approaches it too, and how she talks about her homosexuality when she was in that and lesbianism and like,
fascinating.
It's fascinating because she comes at it from, yes, an emotional level, but a logical level, an intellectual level, a biblical level, and then wraps it all together so nicely. You go, geez, if I was in this sin, I don't know if I would want to keep continuing in this sin.
Yeah.
And it's in such a loving way, but it's very firm.
Yep, that's right.
She's not bending on anything.
Nope.
She's like, absolutely, sin, abomination, we can't do it. But yeah, I don't know why we're talking. Well, you'll see. We'll have her on, guys. You can watch that.
It's really good, man.
In the next couple weeks, or go watch what she talked about. Is Clear Truth putting up the?
I don't know.
Videos.
We don't know. I know that they sold like online tickets.
Okay.
For cheaper. But I don't know if they're gonna. I'm sure they're gonna use the content somehow.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're gonna.
We'll
Post
find it.
Yeah.
If not, I think we covered it pretty well here. All this
Yeah.
podcasts, we had almost all the guests on. I think.
Yeah.
Well, we did have all the guests on between all of us.
Yeah, between all of us, we got
You,
them
me,
all.
Corey, TC, Keith. Yeah.
Yeah. Go check out all the other podcasts too.
Yeah.
Don't
Don't worry about us doing a podcast over here, Keith. You can turn that up actually. Look at
He's focused.
He's so focused. No one loves watching Keith more than Keith.
Go follow Clear Truth Media on socials.
Yeah.
YouTube channel. I think they've got
They're friends.
X. They got X.
Yep, I've been tagging them in it, but it's like Clear True _ something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
You'll find it. Just
We'll
put Clear
link it.
Truth
We'll
on
link
X,
it.
and I'll link it. Yeah.
We'll link it.
But yeah, so watching people that I had never even really seen speak, that was awesome. And then, dude, always at the conferences, hanging out with the bros. I mean, back here in the podcast area, joking.
Yeah, dinners,
ribbing
lunches.
each other, arguing over things, debating things, laughing. Being corrected by Foskey.
Yeah, that baptism debate at lunch was spicy.
Yeah.
It's spicy.
Keith, that was day one, too.
That was
Keith
day
came
one.
out of firing.
Keith said, "I want B-dubs and war."
Yeah.
That's what he said.
What kind of sauce would you like on your wings, sir? The blood of my enemies. Yeah.
He played for keeps. He played for keeps.
Which, hey, shout out, coming up March 27th, we're going to have Keith Foskey, Matthew Everhart live
I'll be watching
for the
that.
debate.
I'm going to be in the
I will be
comment
hosting that. And it's going to be mode of baptism, which is going to be fun. I can't wait. So we'll give you more information as that comes out too. But yeah, we wanted to have Parker on. Like I said, this was his stomping grounds. This is his church. He got most of the guys out here. And then it was funny because you're really not connected in like the production of it, but we just kept asking you all the questions as if you were putting it on. And you're like, I don't know. We're just hanging, dude. I just got you here. But it was so cool because he's only a half hour away from me. So it was kind of cool to be able to jump in the car and bring everything down here a half hour away instead of driving to Tennessee.
I will say it was kind of nice. So
especially for you. The last one you did.
I don't know.
You drove all my stuff 19 hours.
Yeah, I don't know if your audience remembers, but I took your stuff to
You're the man.
Texas, and I had your you don't have it here, but your
it's a canvas of my logo in the back
I put
window.
it in the back of so I took all of my set, which was a pretty big set. I packed it all into that Ford Fusion.
I can't believe you got it in there. 4 chairs.
It took me an hour and a half.
All of my cables, all of my roadcaster stuff, all of yours.
Then we got there and you were like, hey, Parker didn't even realize he had my clothes too.
Oh yeah, I stuffed those down in there. Dude, you saved me so much time and money because all I literally did was I bought I'll say that later, but I bought basically $121 round trip ticket.
Yeah,
and just walked on with a backpack.
Yeah,
and went to Texas and back.
Yeah,
it was awesome.
And then you got the free marketing of your canvas in the back window of
2,000 miles.
2,000 miles of dead man walking.
I do like that. Yeah, you
all the semis that I passed probably you had a spike in downloads.
Yeah,
all the truckers.
That's awesome.
So,
we're wrapping up. It's a little quieter here. Everyone's kind of calming down, and we're in our last session right now. And I think this is my last one for the day, and I had to have it with you to wrap it up because you invited me. You kind of got all these guys down here to do it. So what a better honor to wrap up the Dangerous Friends Conference 2025 with Parker from Watchwell and Vindicated Productions. We do next year, Mikey?
Official?
Come on, baby.
You said it. I think you said. Well, who's? Oh, you said maybe.
Yeah. To a maybe next year.
To a possible event.
It could be any event. It could be one of your events.
Well, here since we have the decider here.
Yeah. You wanna?
Since we have the decision maker here, I'm just thinking maybe have the podcasters out in that main foyer next year when you first walk in, because what I found is at conferences, people like to see the guests being interviewed. They'll stand around. They're part of the live audience. This was kind of secluded here, just some constructive criticism. Great spot. But I'm just saying, you put us out in the open. You've got a Steve Day sitting there, people standing around, Foskey asking them questions, people interacting. I've been to other conferences where that flow seems to work. So I'm just saying. This was nice, though. This was kind of like a comics green room during the we were watching it there, but then we'd go off on other things and debating, like I said, baptism and Oh, I thought you said, I'll do whatever I want. That's what I heard.
And he will.
And he will.
Are you Presbyterian?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, so you need to form a committee.
I'll get back.
Baptists.
Yeah.
We can just make
We did. 2 Presbyterians right here.
Robert's Rules of Order.
The funny thing is there's only 2 in there, so 1 is a quorum. So we can do whatever we want. Yeah. No, just a suggestion, but that was cool. But should we end it so we don't
Get in trouble.
Yeah. We're planning. We're recording right now. I can edit it out.
Okay, as soon as you're done recording, you can never come back.
Hey, but that's it, guys. Shout out to him. Tell him where to go to listen to you, to see you, all that stuff, and we'll link it up.
Me?
Yeah, you.
Yeah, Watchwell Podcast.
Watchwell, baby.
On,
Vindicated
YouTube,
Productions.
VindicatedProductions.com, and Twitter, X, whatever we're calling it now, Facebook, Instagram, the Watchwell Podcast, all the things, yeah.
Cool, guys. This is the last one for Dangerous Friends. Thanks for joining us. They're all mashed up. I don't know how many minutes we have all together, but it'll be a lot. It'll be fun, and I'll probably be releasing this over 2 weeks, so you'll get it for 2 weeks. Remember, you can find out more about us at dmwpodcast.com. Go there to the merch store, support the show, get one of your fun Wine 'em, Dine 'em, Romans 9 'em mugs, and then the new T-shirts that are selling very well are Job 13:5 shirts. How about you shut up and let that be your wisdom? Sometimes you just have to quote scripture to the pagans, even if they don't like it. Remember, the chief end of man is to glorify God and enjoy him forever. God bless. Be sure to check us out at dmwpodcast.com, where you can purchase the best and snarkiest merch on the internet, support the show, and leave us a review or message. Dead Men Walking can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Dead Men Walking Podcast, and on Twitter X at Real DMW Podcast. The Dead Men Walking Podcast is part of the Fight Laugh Feast Network. For exclusive show content, be sure to download the Pub TV app and become a member. If you're a business that needs to reach hundreds of thousands of potential customers in your demographic, podcast advertising might be for you. Send all inquiries to deadmenwalkingpodcast@gmail.com.
None your biscuits.